So today I have a guest on the podcast who, to me personally, is, this is like a celebrity to me. And I say that because she has written a memoir. So I'd like to welcome Erin Steele, author of Sunrise, Over, Half-Built Houses, Love, Longing, and Addiction in Suburbia. And I'll show you the book here. Canadian author, grew up in Surrey, British Columbia, where I am based and have been for some time. Welcome to the episode. Erin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much. So happy to be here.
It's really special for me to have authors on because it's just such a personal interest. But I think that what people really love is these stories where someone has been courageous enough to put things down and to share them with the world. Something that someone might only put in their diary or tell a best friend or maybe even not. So I want to kind of start this by your book, Sunrise Over Half-Built Houses, Love, Longing, and Addiction in Suburbia. So writing a book, especially a memoir, is a huge, huge piece of work, massive accomplishment, requires a lot of bravery, vulnerability. And I want to know a little bit about your journey. When did you first think, I'm going to write a memoir, I'm going to consider this, and take us through to when this book was then available for purchase and on the bookshelves and you can order it and it's out there?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, it's definitely has been a long journey. I've always been a writer, since the time I was a child. I was writing long stories just out of my own motivation. And I think I, move through the world as a writer, really like noticing things, and that goes externally and internally, quite quite introspective. So I'm not sure that I'm not sure I was ever just like, I'm going to write my life story or my memoir. Because in some ways I'm like, don't make it about me, feel something from it. But,
Right.
and I think probably how you could tell the way that it's written, I'm not like, look at my wonderful life, but I think how I kind of got from being a writer and knowing I am and have been always writing, will always write something, would definitely have written a book. um, I think just through my addiction, which is, a big part of what the book is about, I think I hit on some truth,
Yeah.
and part of those truths involved this like emotional energy that, I found really governing my addiction was very, very similar to the emotional energy that had governed a lot of different things in my life that wouldn't necessarily be categorized as addiction. So you'll kind of see like a few different parts in there, and, ultimately the speaker starts running, which, people don't really like correlate those things. But I think it's just, again, as a writer going through the world where I see these truths, I kind of discovered that and was like, you know what, this is something that I absolutely need to write about. And because it was my personal experience, I guess I'm going to just leverage my personal experience to, speak to those truths and tell that story. So that's essentially how it came to be writing. And then beyond that, it was very solitary for a long time. Have a little bit of perfectionist tendencies, and so I kind of just like worked away at it for many years,
Okay.
and didn't show a soul. Went through a bunch of different drafts, and then finally, I kind of just lost perspective on it, to the point of like, hey, I need some other eyes on this. And then basically, from the time I started showing other people, like writers groups, a couple people in my life, to publication was actually a really short period. So ended up being, kind of showed people, made some edits, put it out there, pitched it at a literary conference, and got a book deal pretty quick. And here we are. So yeah, long and short. Yeah.
What do you think? There are a lot of people who write about their lives and who write about many things, and they don't get published. And then they'd have to try, they have to try, they have to try. Not to say they don't have amazing things to share. Everyone has a phenomenal story to share. But what do you think it was in your story, in your piece that you were pitching to be published that turned things around so quickly? What stood out, do you think, to the publishers?
I think probably it has a lot to do with my intentions, that it was like never my intention to be like, this is my story, I'm just going to like share it all. And I mean, I think memoir is also can be a bit of a misunderstood genre in some ways, where, I've really strongly adhered to the idea of memoir being centered around a certain theme, and my theme really was external fulfillment and finding fulfillment by seeking it externally. And part of my like understanding of like, this is one of those truths, I think it really does transcend just addiction as we classically know it. It hits passion and love and like those like beautiful geniuses who have these ideas and are just like go, it's like those that like outside inside relationship, I think, is a relatable thing, and I think that probably has a lot to do with it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I have spent probably the past, you may know, I have my own lived experience with addiction myself that I've been very open about on the podcast and through other advocacy work. I've read many addiction memoirs. It's kind of become a space that was kind of became oversaturated. It was very unique, and then it became really saturated. I was saying to you in some notes that I sent your way that while reading your book, your story felt like unlike any memoir I had read. And that's because it was a voice I had not heard. And I also, like you alluded to before, I saw myself in some of your most vulnerable moments. Some of those moments where you probably wanted to go into the ground and have the dirt go in. Those moments.
Yep. Oh yeah.
I saw myself in those moments and in times in my youth when, I was doing things to seek acceptance, approval, or whatever it may be that were just, not who I am as a human being. And so I say this to you and I share it with you because as you're writing a book that includes the topic of addiction, and this is a saturated space, how did you feel going into that? Was that something that was on your mind at all? How did you overcome it, if it was, or did you just kind of go in not thinking of that element?
Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, like I mean, I've read my fair amount of addictions memoirs as well, and I think it's kind of a combination of that. Like, you know what? I'm just going to include the things that are not just like the drug addiction. It's a lot of them kind of do follow the like formula in a way, which works. Cells of kind of this is addiction, and then this is the kind of redemption, and it's very clean in some ways. Not always, but often. And I think um, it was always, my addiction and my emotions are so inextricably linked, and so I think that was a really, really big part of it is sort of like, yeah, when you talk about those parts, those like, you really want to just be like hiding and not like, mass publishing it to the world. But
I'm glad you did, though.
thanks. Me too. I'm glad I did as well. I really am. And I think it's just, that was really important for me to convey is like the reality of it as well as the journey to recovery is really, I mean, for me, I can really only speak for myself, but for me it was not a linear thing like this is problematic and this is or I don't even want to use that word, but it's not an A to B journey where you are living in active addiction and then you're recovered. It's a lot more nuanced than that. And I really wanted to be able to use a literary vehicle to represent that reality.
Oh, yeah. No, it kind of leads me to my next question, which is related to other people who are involved in your life. I mentioned wanting to write a memoir, and one of my biggest fears has been, one can't write a memoir without including those who are there. And, was there this fear that, now I know at the beginning of the book, and I love how you do this. When I first opened it, it's under note from an author, and I won't read it in its entirety, but it essentially says, I'm quoting here, "Try as it might, a book cannot reflect the infinitely whole and complex nature of people and experience. There are a million ways to look back and categorize the trajectory of a life, and this book represents one particular trajectory from one mind with one particular," and it goes on. So you're setting, a clear message that this is your experience, but still, you are writing about others that you still may be close to. Was that hard? Tell me about that.
Oh, it was the hardest. Yeah, it was absolutely the hardest. As soon as the book moved from, writing to, okay, we're going to get this published now, and because that was always my goal, to publish it. Wasn't writing it for myself, but I I think it was the hardest because it's obviously don't want to hurt other people in any way, or make people feel like, their stuff is, out there on display without consent. And, simultaneously, it's like I needed to convey this story. And as it works similar to the inside outside relationship, there's the self and other relationship. So it really, it's impossible to avoid. And so I did a combination of things. So basically, and simultaneously, I also did not want, between the time I got the book deal to the time it was coming out, I did not want my book to come out and personally, maybe selfishly, be just filled with stress of what people are going to, people who were appeared in some version of the story, how they were going to react. And so it was a very daunting element of this entire journey. And so what I did as soon as I got the book deal, everybody who was represented, and granted, I have drastically changed description, identifying details of many, if not most, of the, ultimately characters. But everybody who had a contentious role, exception of 1 to 2, obviously, I reached out and I was like, hey, this book, there's a representation of you in it. I am happy to discuss anything that you want to discuss. If you want to read it, if you want me to change your description, et cetera, and kind of gave people the opportunity. Got a pretty big and wide response. Some people wanted to read just what they were in. Some people wanted to read the whole thing. Some people just wanted to talk about it. Some people didn't. But overall, I think it brought the peace that I needed as a writer. Such a tough thing to explain to people. It's like you're a character in a book now. Like what, and it was really important for me to handle that with care. So yeah, for the most part, it was a good experience, but not easy at all. And I don't think there's like a clear answer. And even like me going to the people, there's personal ethics, right? Like that was my personal ethical decision. But yeah, it's a tough one for sure.
Yeah, it's tough because this is your memoir, and therefore it's impossible for you to provide anyone's perspective but your own, right? And that makes it really challenging. But I think it sounds like the way you went about it was very thoughtful and very detail oriented. During the book, this theme, and you were discussing it a little bit. As you answered the question about writing the memoir, you reference and refer to this void, this emptiness, that often brings pain and that can bring self-medication, such as addiction. And we can self-medicate in many ways, but soothe and self-medicate in many ways, that you're trying to fill throughout your young life, whether that be with alcohol, drugs, food, relationships, can be anything. At one point you say, and I quote, "I wonder if the space inside some people is bigger." And while you describe addiction, you reference, and I quote, "an empty space screaming to be filled," end quote. So that's, I think I think that will sit with a lot of people, whether they've had addiction challenges or not. It certainly sat with me. It was a screaming space, and it would not stop until it was filled. And filling it resulted in very, repercussions that, you would never think you would intentionally bring on. And I don't believe it's intentional, but it's repercussions that are painful. How did you discover healthy and loving ways to address and fill and accept, or just really live with and manage this empty space that you describe?
Yeah, I mean, that is the journey for sure. I think like a big part of it is, yeah, so like the book definitely is so much about that, empty space and that need to fill it. And I think, I do think I have it in there is like eventually where it's like, it screams, fill me, but it whispers, look at me, and so I think that's sort of the negotiation that just starts to appear for the, speaker in the book, aka me, that I would say has grown significantly in, life after the voice of the book. Because I think, yeah, there's a lot of different things. So it's like, I think as I transitioned away from active addiction, I started running, and that was like a very, it was critical. It was critical to the way that I was figuring out my own recovery. I needed to run. But even that got very compulsive. Like there's a very big difference on the, okay, I went for a run, now I feel better. Like, oh, I haven't ran, I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin. And so I think I started by, so-called filling this hole with healthy things. But it's exhausting. Like that as well as just,
Yeah.
you could be the, fill it with all the healthy things, but there was, for me, there was still something that, I was avoiding. And I think it kind of came in hints, and not like something concrete, but I think just a lot of it was that sort of reframing of like, maybe I don't need to like fill this. Maybe I actually like, to risk sounding trite, like love this as part of me.
Yeah.
And I think that has really been groundbreaking in my life, and my, recovery. And I mean, it's been many, many years now. But I think a key part of that has been, yeah, looking at it, letting it be, and kind of more like nurturing it slash myself. And just, I think even trying to like fill that space has been a form of, um, self rejection,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm like, just like very much in my body a lot more these days. And I'm very much like able to kind of check in with how I feel. And yeah, if that space, which I think is more filled up by kind of a lot of different things in kind of bigger, more beautiful life. It's and if it gets loud, it's like I actually kind of try to turn towards it,
Mm-hmm.
and not tell myself in any way to stop it or shut up, or any of those kind of like, cruel internal monologues that can kind of, govern those things, and for reasons. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I believe, that, there are a lot of people who I have observed close to me, and who I believe have that empty space, and they may not be using drugs, they may not be in an addictive, but they are trying to distract themselves via work, via keeping busy, via anything at all. And these are not negative things; they're positive things. They're healthy things. But in order, because they sitting quietly with oneself, I think is something that very few people can do in silence for a decent period of time. I know I get antsy sometimes when I'm doing that, and I need to work on that. Do you make that an intentional part of your life now?
Yeah, I mean, like off and on for sure. Like I try to sit in meditation. I mean, sort of fallen off the wagon a little bit, but I have a daily yoga practice, which, was really just a way to come into myself, and let myself sit with it. But for sure, simple stillness, like my cat is uncomfortable. um, Simple stillness. And sometimes I will just go, no, not even part of a practice, just sit on my couch and just feel into my body because, the mind is like a yammerer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know what the mind just like yammers on and on and on, and then there's that like thought feeling loop. And, you can see the speaker of me in the book get very, very caught up in thoughts and feelings. And then you're just like, need drugs to help. And so I think not taking my thoughts too seriously, not letting my thoughts feed my feelings, and then just to kind of like sit with that and just kind of like even just like shut the brain up by feeling what I'm feeling literally in my body has really gone a long way. So I mean, I do practice it even if it's just casual sit on the couch. And not always great. Sometimes I'm like I'm still just as emotional as I ever was when I was living in active addiction, just as sensitive, all of those things.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm more like with myself and I'm more like, okay, what do you need here?
Yes.
A lot more loving and supportive. And I don't think I was that previously. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I find that those who have gone through addiction and have then recovered tend to do pretty amazing things. And by that, I mean those who are have a sensitivity or something to fill that's so extreme that they are actually self-sabotaging, which what addiction essentially we're self-sabotaging, is like a hypersensitivity that can also be on the flip side a gift and can offer so much to the world, whatever your talent may be, whatever your skill set, whatever type of personality you have. And the book is a perfect example of that, right? And all that, pain from that void and all that, or that void is such a negative thing, that sensitivity is so hurting me so much. It's awful. But then look what we have. We have this beautiful piece here. And we also have, a young woman who is now healthy and sharing your story in a way that you are proud of. And it's that part I found amazing. I did reference a part from your book to my husband, and I immediately was like, wow. And for him, he didn't get it the way I did. So maybe this is something that is from somebody who has lived through active addiction, or I don't know. Maybe it's just a personal thing. In your book, after a painful incident, you describe, quote, the come down, the thing we must endure to make it out the other side, end quote. And that, I was like, oh, that is the worst. And that ends up being the best, right? It's both things. So, and by that I mean, in active addiction, you have that come down, of course, always, but then it can also be on the growth side, because when you're going through some of these come downs, it can also mean that you are being refined as a human, right? And that you're growing spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. How do you see this come down, Erin? And where is the other side for you?
Yeah, I love that question because it's so true that, actually, I'll just quickly speak to your sensitivity because, like, it is right within this realm here because it's like the thing that seems to be something that might be causing so much trouble is actually just, this gift in so many ways. And like today, I love my sensitivity. I'm proud of my sensitivity. Like it allows me to see things in a different way and notice things that, maybe not a lot of people notice. And also just kind of this don't know, wide-eyed awareness, which I think I'm like so grateful for now, yet in the past just stomped it down. And so like come down, it is so similar. And I love how you equated it to the good stuff as well, because I really think now it's like the world, like life is a series of, I mean, there are little come, if you want to call it little come downs, that you kind of have to go through. And it's interesting. Like, I think, if you ever end up in, a tough situation that you need to like navigate interpersonally with somebody where it's like, this feels really hard and feels really tough, but then you actually like find these like gifts and treasures and learning, and you actually like move through it. And so I think, yeah, I think that is so apt. That a come down can be anything that feels maybe a little bit messy or not quite right, or you're not just like, having one of those good days walking down the sidewalk and if all is well. And then also I might even take it to the next level where it's, especially as women too, like, we go through our monthly cycles. I think even just like, that is entering the public consciousness. And it's like, I used to be like, why do I want to burn my life down like 3 days before
Yeah.
my period?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's this real thing. And I think, why am I in my 40s when I'm starting to just think about this stuff? And so I think it's that combination of like, we move through things sometimes a bit cyclically, sometimes, maybe always, like I always think about the spiral, maybe always up. But I think, I think the gift is navigating exactly where we are, whether we're in a tough spot in life, whether we're in a great spot of life, and just knowing that everything is transient in a way and we're always just going to move through it. Um, and then also, how do you find as much balance within all of that? And I guess equanimity is the word, is not be so linked to the come down, you know, slash other side of the come down cycle, but like observe it in a way that it's there but not everything.
Yeah, it also kind of aligns with this idea of there are some things in life that you can't walk around and you can't go over and you can't go under and you just have to go through, right? I don't know if you remember that song from childhood. What was it? You can't go under it, you can't go over it, you got to go through it. And it was like the grass or the water. It was a kid's
Oh,
song.
no, but I love it. It's an amazing kids song.
Yeah, and
It's a great human song.
exactly. And it's like some of these things I'll see when I'm reading to my kids, and I'm like, they were teaching us to this when we were 5 and 6 years old, but we just didn't understand exactly how important it was to learn it. So, anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
there are, sorry, go ahead, Erin.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I think that part of that really is, oh, geez, I've lost my train of thought here. But sorry, this is gonna be an edit moment.
No, that's okay.
Um,
I cut you
I
off
want to say
there.
something about that though. No, I cut you off.
I was speaking about learning it in childhood and that we didn't get it then.
Oh yeah, just being able to go through. Oh yeah, okay. It's still, yeah. I think that also speaks to that idea of the having that space inside, I think, and also the society where we live in, like we are able to avoid going through, in a lot of different ways. And in a way, we almost have all of the kind of opportunities to avoid going through to, make ourselves just like feel good in the moment. Whereas sometimes like it does have to feel hard for a little while, and like that's okay. And I think maybe that's where our personal power is that we are actually very strong and very resilient, and like we can actually so fiercely believe in ourselves, and move through. Like, yeah. And I think, yeah, that.
No, I think it's a great point, and it's something that we as humans tend to avoid, but when we don't, amazing things can result from it for ourselves and for the world,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
There are parts in your book where you share things that most wouldn't be brave enough or willing to share. Like I said to you earlier, I can't remember if it was recorded or if it was when we were chatting. In a CBC article written about your book, the journalist describes the story by saying that it stares at, I'll start this again, describes the story by saying that it, and I start the quote, stares at you with searing honesty until you look away, end quote. You also mentioned in a prior interview with Electric Lit that, start quote, readers can feel when you are holding back, which I thought was very interesting. Was it scary writing out those very personal details in your life as you saw them appearing? Or I don't know, were you writing or were you typing? Typing. So as you were typing and you saw them appearing on the screen, it's different, right, when it's here. And then when it's actually down there, even if you haven't published it, even if it's just typed. When you saw the words and it all coming together on a page in words and actually being real there, what was that like for you to read? And can you just talk about that process a bit and also the bit about holding back?
Yeah, totally. I will say it's still like there are parts of my book, if I'm like flipping through, I'm like, no, I'm not going to read that part. So it's like I still am, it's like this weird literary duty I felt. I don't know where that came from, but I think I really came to it more from a literary perspective where I'm like, damn it, I have to put this in here. This is like part of the theme. This is very important. So I really kind of just, took myself as a character. So I think in the actual crafting of it, I had that interesting like separation where I'm like, hey, I'm just like, this is my literary endeavor. Like I'm not journaling, I'm like constructing this thing. It makes sense. But I think once it was like, okay, this is coming towards publication, because I mean, it was years. I drafted it and drafted it again. But it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. Definitely, I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why am I putting all of this out there? But honestly, the most amazing lesson in that is all of that fear that was so incredibly strong exist only before it actually published. And once it went out there, people, and because I genuinely thought people are going to be like, yeah, I don't like you anymore, to that point. And so it was terrifying. I got my partner to read it first, which again, there are things that I hadn't like talked to her about before in any sort of depth. And then that was like, okay, that's one little thing that is good. Of course, like I had sent it to my parents prior. But then people just started coming to me and just telling me, like, saying things like, oh, this actually like makes me love you more. And I heard things like that all the times, like, you were so worried, I don't know what you were worried about, like it's so like human and relatable and all of that. And I was just like, now I don't worry about it at all. I don't care, I don't fear it, I don't any of that stuff. So it was just an interesting lesson in that the anticipatory fear is real. Like, I was scared of something that wasn't going to happen, and something that didn't happen. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I suppose it's also, I don't know if this was your experience, but once it was published, you realize that, those people who truly know you are going to be, if anything, just more impressed by your bravery than anything else. And anyone who would, criticize it, perhaps that's not the person that you want to be as connected with, because it may be just not in a judgmental way, but just, may not be aligned on certain things that are quite important in a relationship.
Exactly. And I feel like you kind of hit that too, because it's like, it almost allowed me to be more connected with myself, to be like, it's my story. Like, yeah, if you're gonna if
Yeah.
you're gonna judge me or hate on me, then yeah, maybe you are not aligned to somebody I want to be around, for sure. And I think it just helped make me stronger in an interesting, surprising way.
Wow. That alone is an experience. Yeah. Wow. I'm just, it's pretty, it's amazing to think of it. At one point in your memoir, you're actually describing the first time that you used crystal meth, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but becomes kind of the I don't know, I don't believe any drug is hard or soft, but the harder drug that kind of ended was the end point of your active addiction. And you were apprehensive from what I remember of the description. You didn't feel so. I remember you saying, I kind of feel at this moment like I want to be back in my parents' house in bed and not out here doing this. Like you kind of, your instincts kind of felt it, but something overpowered those instincts, and that can easily happen. And the data in the recovery and addiction world is not inspiring. I do want to say that I have hope for every single individual who is using substances and wants to stop. But what were for you some of the key elements or ingredients? Because it's so personal to everybody in your recovery. Because, you know, stopping using crystal meth is not an easy thing to do.
And I will just say the end point does get to heroin, unfortunately. So it's yeah, ends up being definitely, yeah, even more so than that. Um, yeah, and as far as elements of recovery, so it's interesting. So for me, um, like the the program, the Narcotics Anonymous program, was not something that worked for me.
Yeah.
Like I think a big part of that, you know, for better or worse, at the very beginning, I was like, when I first started trying to, you know, stop using, and both, like, actually, if I could rewind back, like, I think, so stopping using crystal meth only worked because I started drinking heavily in between, and then I discovered heroin. You know,
Okay.
I think
Okay.
that's the only way that I kind of got through that. But I think it just speaks to the theme, you know, of like one thing turning to the other.
No, it's interesting. And the only reason I mentioned I focused in on crystal meth is because, and we all have our own personal views of this. In my view and in my mind, I think of crystal meth as one of the hardest drugs that one would come off of. But I am not a professional, and that's just my what I thought my perspective would be on that. But this is your life and your experience, so go on.
Yeah, with crystal meth, it was basically I was apprehensive to start it and then I couldn't live without it, you know, and that was that. It was like all of a sudden I was not me without this drug. And so stopping, I had to somehow get to the point in my mind that I was less me. But even stopping that, I wasn't addressing anything. I just jumped from one thing to the next. Um, but you know, as far as recovery, so yeah, Narcotics Anonymous, as much as it works for very many people, I know people who have built big, beautiful lives thanks to Narcotics Anonymous and have been living without using for decades, quite literally. For me, I think it just at the beginning, you know, that idea of kind of giving my what felt to me like my personal power over to a source that was not me. Um, I just felt like I didn't have to do that, you know, and I don't know if that's some like dogged part of my brain that I was able to hang on to, but I think it was really important for me to truly believe that, which I did. And I think ultimately, you know, stepping away from drugs permanently, it was really a big part of it was that I believed that I could. Um, I recognize, like, I always want to acknowledge my privilege, you know, because I do have, I consider myself having privilege of, you know, even people in my life who weren't using, um, you know, things like that for sure, I think matters. But um, as far as recovery, I think it was kind of a long back and forth process where I kind of just figured it all myself. But ultimately, it's like I know in the fibers of my being that using drugs does not do for me what I thought it did for me, you know? And it sounds very simplistic, but like, it's like after all this time, and you know, even after my drug addiction, I would at times go and start drinking excessively, which is still part of that same beast. And I think now um, I'm just not there anymore because I just know that it doesn't do what I thought it did.
Mm-hmm.
And, it has taken a lot of looking at myself, a lot of, yeah, learning to be still. Also, I was diagnosed with ADHD at 37, um, which is a huge part of it. And, people who use the crystal meth as an example, like I don't know what the statistics are, but it's like 5 to 10 to 50% possibly of people who are using drugs like crystal meth do actually have ADHD, and compared to like the Gen Pop society. So it really is a big thing, and I think a lot of it was me in hindsight. I was medicating myself a lot. So, part of my picture is, be managing my ADHD, which also in some ways helps me be still and helps me, sit with myself. And in no way is it like a light switch of a fix, but it is a piece of a larger picture that involves, you know, healthy habits, connection, um, you know, finding ways to love myself even when I'm not feeling lovable to myself, which might be as simple as going to observe birds, like the bird nerd that I have grown into, you know. So it's complex, for me, but I never went through any sort of traditional, like uh, detox or treatment. Was on the methadone program, detoxed off of it myself, and just kind of figured it all out. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm sure there are better options than those.
No, that was the option that worked for you, right? And that's why it's so personal to everybody. I've shared and I feel the same way.
Yeah.
NAA, wonderful for those it works for. Did not work for me. Every time I left an NA meeting, I wanted to use more than when I came in because all we did the whole time was talk about it. But I also see people who have really, really benefited from it. For me, it was harm reduction, therapy, also my faith definitely played a role in there, which is interesting because often faith will turn people away from NAAA. That's not really what turned me away from it. But yes, it's such a personal thing, and I think that's maybe part of the problem why we as a society are struggling to support those who would like to stop and are finding that they are unable to at this time, is because we're lumping everybody into this is how we're going to fix this problem. First of all, it's not a problem to fix. It's an individual human, one by one by one by one, who needs their own individual personalized healing and understanding of what they're experiencing. And it's interesting, you mentioned your ADHD diagnosis later in life. My husband's had the same, he's been open about it. And I've heard others. And we have a generation kind of those born in the 80s and those born in the 70s who were not diagnosed as they are being now. Like my 8-year-old son has ADHD, was diagnosed at the age of 5 or 6. So now we can move ahead with that knowledge. But as a child, I remember, I had anxiety and depression. It was never talked about, never managed, never nothing. And same with my husband. And you're telling, yours wasn't diagnosed either. So it's interesting. And I do wonder if now that we're paying closer attention, and we should be anyway, to young people's mental health, that hopefully we will be able to, prevent this generation from falling to the lies of what addiction brings to us, and that is a solution and a very wonderful feel good of the symptoms that is so temporary. And when you play that tape out, it is a very scary horror movie. So yeah, it's. Thank you for sharing for your journey, your personal journey. Part of your isolation and loneliness while you were in your youth seemed to come from, and this is just what I read from the book, what I took from it, seemed to come from feeling as though you couldn't be who you authentically are. Can you talk a bit about that and how you managed to accept and embrace the complete you and who you are?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think we've probably touched on this in different ways throughout this conversation, but really it's that like, yeah, I am a complete me. Like, sometimes I'm very emotional, I feel things very deeply. I can be very sensitive, also very strong. I have good days and bad days, and if you even want to call them that, good moments and bad moments. And I think part of it is just like not needing to be a certain way that I have kind of told myself I need to be. I'm like, no, you know what? Sometimes I'm just intense and that's just how it is. And sometimes that's like really beautiful. And sometimes it's really like, that's a lot. But like, that's okay, And I think it's just that is the most important thing to me, where it's just that true self acceptance. And not that I'm sometimes like, God, Erin, just but at the same time, it's accepting that too. That's part of it. Like,
Yeah.
I think striving for that anyway. And it's not always perfect. Nothing is. But I think just not telling myself based on some standard that isn't even real that I need to be X. And that brings me a decent amount of peace. And then also, you mentioned therapy. Definitely, therapy has been very helpful in my life. Um, but so like this one concept I learned from therapy is there's emotions and secondary emotions. And like secondary emotions are the emotions about the emotions, and those are often the ones that cause the most internal strife. So just trying to be like, okay, this is my feeling. Whoa, it's feeling a lot. Maybe it has a name. Maybe it feels something in my body. Maybe it doesn't. But then not to like feed myself emotions about the emotions, because that's when things get crazy, basically.
Yeah.
Internally feel very intense internally and hard internally. So just trying to be as present with myself, whatever that looks like, as possible, and try to remain as centered as possible too. To part of not taking that stuff so seriously is being able to kind of observe without getting caught up and knowing that I do have this grounded grounded center within me, which is maybe my own form of spirituality that feels in me but also bigger than me and also kind of part of everything really and shared. So,
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's so personal to everyone. Your life, how it is today. So just so people are aware, as I was reading the book, just so listeners know, I think most do, but as I was reading the book, it was especially personal to me for many reasons, but it was also set in Surrey, British Columbia. So all the actual physical places in which Erin was describing her going and being and passing by and seeing and everything were recognizable to me. I've lived now in Surrey for several years. And so I really encourage you to pick up a copy of this book. They have it. You can order it online. They also have it at. I got mine at Indigo. Ordered it online in Indigo. But it is a piece that as on the front it says here, Paul Lindsay, author of the book Later, describes it like a piece of music. It's like no memoir you have read before. I'm telling you, that's my voice, and it's by an extremely talented author who has been behaving, sharing a beautiful memoir that's full of painful moments, but just is a beautiful book. Erin, I just wanted to ask you about your life today as we wrap up, and what do you feel today? Um, how do you feel about your life as it is now? What are you proud of about your life as it is now? And then on the flip side, are there any kind of key issues, a couple of key issues that are, concerning to you, that are on your heart when it comes to your life today?
yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful for my life today. I'm grateful to have friends and community, an amazing partner, and even just like things that I love about my days are, oftentimes simple things. It's just like being goofy with my partner in the kitchen,
Yeah.
It's like riding my bicycle, just these very simple moments. My work, I work in marketing, and like love my clients. I love like figuring things out. I love using my brain that can overthink the crap out of anything to like you know figuring out customer messaging, things like that.
Yeah.
I love writing, to get up at 6 a.m. and I'm working on a second book, so just it's not a
Oh,
memoir. But just writing and having that moment. I love reading, love going on little adventures, like very simple things, are what I appreciate. I've been able to build my life. I have a mortgage, not that that's necessarily
that's a huge
indicative
thing.
of a good life, but yeah, it's just part of what I'm proud of, and that sort of
Yeah.
stability that I've managed to build for myself internally and externally, which is part of accepting that sometimes I feel not like that. But I
Yeah.
think just that self acceptance. So, yeah, those are the things that I love about my life. My little crazy cat who is diabetic and sleeping beside my arm as we speak, those simple things.
Yeah.
Issues. I'm currently in one of my annual argue on Facebook with strangers moments that I don't wade into very often. But it's so futile, but sometimes I just can't help myself.
Yes, I know what you mean.
But it is, uh, it's around kind of everything that we're talking about, stigma. And saw like a conservative politician posted about, you know, community safety and, leveraging people, pictures of unhoused people, and saying that families are scared to go to the park and this and that. And I just, I
Hmm.
think part of it is like, well, if we're talking about community safety, we need to talk about the people who are living in unsafe conditions, who don't have the privilege of a roof over their heads, and who have don't have access to services for many, many different reasons. So, I mean, this is why I'm so happy to talk to you, because I appreciate your work and motive to help break down these stigmas, that are just so harmful for the people who need it most.
Hmm.
And I find that, people who are living in unhoused and living in active addiction, particularly, and again, many cases, um, just need more compassion from society, and need to, particularly by politicians, not be treated as the problem. Like, makes me very mad, just very, very mad and sad. And sometimes it feels like this, uphill battle of, it's so simple and obvious to me. And
Yeah.
that somebody who I'm arguing with on this thread is talking about, well, they're sociopaths and choosing this life. I'm like, sorry, you talk about billionaires? Because,
Yeah.
um,
Nobody chooses
yeah,
that. No.
no, and it's nobody's enthusiastically like, yes, this is exactly what I want to be, the life that I want to be living right now. It's hard, and in a lot of cases, like you said, it's that finding comfort in this thing. And then as a society, we're just supposed to be like, we're going to take this, and if you want a roof over your head, we're going to take away this thing that is the only thing that brings you comfort, and the only thing that you've possibly known to bring you comfort in a long time, and then you get a roof over your head. Like,
Hmm.
it's astounding to me, as, yeah, just, it's so clear and obvious to me. And I think just the stigma really does um, impact the resources, and
Hmm.
even the creative thinking that, the business community, the many, many different communities. Like, we are smart. We're a smart society that can figure out a lot of different things, but there's a block between, um, solutions and will for solutions, and devoting that sort of creative energy to finding solutions, while meanwhile people are dying every single day all across Canada. Nobody really people care, but it's, if it was anything else killing this many people, yeah, we wouldn't stand for it.
No, we would
Yeah.
not. And this is, I'll just say one very quick thing on this, and that is that where is our humanity? That's all.
Yeah.
Every one of us, no
Yeah.
matter who you are one move, one step, one horrible tragedy away from a place you never thought you would be in. And
Yeah.
if we all could bring back that empathy, love, compassion, and humanity, and mix it with what you describe there as that where we are incredibly innovative and creative and strategic. If we could all mix those together, this challenge wouldn't be such a huge thing to conquer. It's become a political issue, and it is sad.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, we are all humans. We are all born. We are bound to this earth by gravity, and then we're going to die. Like, we're a rich country. Let's take care of each other.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
No, I think that's one of the biggest issues that our country is facing today, and one of the saddest realities about an amazing country is that one of the saddest realities. Thank you for the time today. Thank you for sharing more after you've shared in your beautiful book. Today I've been joined by Erin Steele, author of Sunrise Over Half-Built Houses, Love, Longing, and Addiction in Suburbia. Here's the book. It is available wherever you purchase your books. Where would you like people to pick it up, Erin, if they were going to grab a copy?
I mean, independent bookstores are always the best, but I think wherever you can get your hands on it, it's amazing and an honor to have people read my book. And and thank you so much for supporting me and my book and my story and all of this and taking the time. It means a lot. So I really
Of
greatly appreciate
course.
that.
No, it's a privilege that you shared. Where and especially I can speak for myself, I feel honored that you shared this with me. Even though you didn't write this for me, but you shared it with me, and I was able to then, a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, a lot of inspirations, a lot of moments came to my mind, and so it's been an honor having you here. Thank you so much for your writing, for being here today, and for sharing, Erin. It's just such a pleasure to meet you and to host you today.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Be kind and truly connect. You are listening to Rachel Thexton Connects.